guy that ran the New York Comedy Festival, he's like, you're good. You're very good, right? And he goes, that's not enough though, right? You have to be great. And that is absolutely true in the comedy business, where everybody wants to be a comic, or everybody wants to be a great musician. Everybody wants to be a musician. Well, if you want to be a musician who stands out, who sells tickets, who can support himself and his family doing that thing, you have to be great.
And now, Escaping the Drift, the show designed to get you from where you are to where you want to be. I'm John Gafford, and I have a knack for getting extraordinary achievers to drop their secrets to help you on a path to greatness. So stop drifting along, escape the drift, and it's time to start right now. Back again for another episode of Like It Says in the Opening, Man, the show that gets you from where you are to where you want to be. And today on the show, look, we will always talk about being successful and reaching for that brass ring, reaching for the thing that's going to get you to that next level. But my guest today is somebody that when I saw this come across my desk, I thought, what a great message to share with you guys, because this guy has it figured out that he can help you find happiness, or believes you should be happy wherever you are on the journey, not just waiting to some mythical brass ring at the end to say, today I'm happy. Our guest today is a comedian, a speaker, an author, and the host of the Reasonably Happy podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. This is Paul Ollinger. Paul, how are you?
What's happening, John? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you. Where are you in the world right now?
I'm sitting in on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I can see buildings on West 86th Street out the back window of our brownstone.
Lovely. So I wish you could have come out to Las Vegas, but I'll take the second best, which is obviously having you on here.
Look forward to having an excuse to come out and hang with you guys.
You do. So I know that, look, you've done some amazing stuff reading the bio here and going through it. And I always like to think that success leaves clues. And I'm always interested in the nature versus nurture, where I almost always start these interviews. So tell me about a young Paul Ollinger. Tell me about young Paul, the either the hero origin story or the villain origin story.
Well, the nurture and the nature part of it is, I mean, I'm a product of my family. I'm one of 6 kids from a big Catholic family in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. I had two amazing parents who were committed to their family and stayed together for 55 years until my mom passed away. And I was always part of a gang. It was a busy, crazy household. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed, and there was lots of people around, and as crowded as it could be, I always knew I was part of something. And you wouldn't have put it in those terms when you were a kid, but looking back, having been a part of that gang, you have a security built into you that people who don't have that, maybe don't experience, or at least as a child.
Now, when you say gang, is this like, are we talking about like Little Rascals? Like this is what you called your friends, or is this a real gang?
No, I mean, like when you're one of 6 kids, by the time I was the 5th out of 6 kids, we were the Brady Bunch, 3 boys, 3 girls, and we weren't unique at all in our Catholic church and our Catholic schools. I mean, half the families had 6 kids or more, it seemed like. And, but when you get to high school, when you're the 5th kid, by the time you show up for your freshman year, you're like, oh, you're one of the Ollinger kids, which is, you want to make your own way, but at the same time, the teachers know who you are. Your older sisters, tease you in the hall. Her friends are like, oh, look at him, he's such a cute freshman or whatever, and make fun of you, and you feel like a complete loser. Yet on some level, it makes you feel, it gives you a safety net that was, I think that was a very big part of my childhood. Childhood dinners were, the dinner table at our family was very raucous. Whenever when one of my siblings would have a friend over to spend the night, they'd all like remark, good God, I've never seen a louder dinner table than what I just experienced with your family. And my dad would go around and make everybody ask the guest a question, and then the guest would have to ask everybody at the table a question. It was sort of, it was like not, it was like 8 is enough for the Brady Bunch, but it was a very wholesome, positive way to grow up. We weren't perfect. We were dirty, nasty kids, but it was a positive environment to grow up in.
That's an interesting thing you just said about your father having kind of a plan for teaching you guys how to communicate with each other. What did he do? What did your dad do?
My dad was a nuclear engineer for Georgia Power, so he did environmental testing around nuclear power plants as part of the Georgia Power and eventually Southern Company system. So he was a nuclear engineer, when 3 Mile Island happened in whatever it was, 78, 79. And so it was a very relevant thing to do. But he's a brilliant guy. It's just not one of those jobs. I mean, we had very stable upbringing, but it wasn't like he had money falling out of his pockets.
Well, I'm guessing with 6 siblings, right? Like that had to have instilled in you, like, I got to hustle a little bit. I got to speak up if I'm going to be heard. I got to stand up.
That's 100% right. And I think it made me a very earnest person. It made me very hungry for attention, I mean, but to be my own person and have something to say and distinguish myself from my older brother and my family in general. When I was a freshman, my brother Cole was a junior in high school. And for the first year of my high school experience, all I had to do, I just heard the beautiful girls at my freshman homeroom table talk about what a great looking guy my older brother was. And I was like, that's the last thing I want to hear. Right. So, and I shared a room with him until I was a sophomore in high school and he was a senior. So, a lot of closeness, a lot of competition that eventually, now my brothers and sisters are very, very good friends. And
you should have just gone the designer imposter perfume route. Like if you like it, like he's unobtainable because you're a freshman, but if you like him, you can have me.
Yeah, you can have
Paul's available.
That's right. Well, eventually really Paul was available to them, but when I got my braces off, maybe things started to improve a little bit. So my son's about to get his braces off, so I'm sort of like, oh man, I wonder what's going to happen to him when in the next few months. He's right at that point where he's about to break out.
Well, let's ask this because braces is a huge deal. And I had one kid, my older son, right? He was in and out of braces like in what seemed like 5 minutes. My daughter is on like year 3 of this siege with braces, and poor thing, man. She is, she's a freshman in high school now, and she's like, when am I getting these off my face? So finally I started asking my wife, I'm like, are we paying by the month with this? Like, what do we need a second opinion? What's going on?
So expensive.
So let me ask you this. Your older siblings, did you have any overachievers that made it very difficult for you?
Well, my brother was a very my immediately older brother. And we had the benefit. He was 4th, I was 5th. We were only 18 months. The youngest 4 of us were all 18 months apart. So we were very close in proximity and in age. He was a very good student. He was a very good basketball player. And so that was the immediate person I wanted to outshine. So I wanted to do better than him. So he was a captain of the basketball team. I wanted to be the captain of the football team, lead role in the play, head of the student government, all that kind of stuff. And I ended up doing all that. So and I was motivated. And I think, there's also part of this thing that, you want to achieve because I wanted to get good grades because I wanted to know that I was okay, and that's part of the thing that I've been exploring in the last 5-6 years with the podcast is to say, we chase these things in our life, money, accomplishment, fame, recognition, because we want to feel okay. We want to know that like, hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Look at my bank account. Look at my 6-pack abs. Look at my, look at the outward signs of success because they are indications of inner peace. But often they are not. And so that's the thing I've really been trying to unpack and explore on the podcast.
Yeah, I love that. Where did you go to college?
I went to Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and then I ended up going to business school at Dartmouth.
Okay, so that's a great education, obviously, which led you to be. I think you were one of the first employees at Facebook, or one of the first key kind of. In that first
I was like 250th employee at Facebook, so still pretty early. And if I'd been smart, I'd have stuck around another few years, and we'd be talking on my yacht right now. But I was very, very fortunate to get there when I did, and I worked with a lot of good people. Before I worked at Facebook, I was very fortunate to be an early employee at a company called Launch.com, which eventually got bought by Yahoo. And it was in the relatively early days of Yahoo, and like phase 2 of Yahoo after the dot-com bubble burst and the company came back and rebuilt itself in kind of like internet 2.0.
Yeah.
And that was I worked with so many excellent people at both of those companies that sometimes it's hard for me to muster empathy for people because I don't know what it's like to not work with great people. I've been just really, really fortunate my entire career to be surrounded by outstanding peers and mentors.
What were you in those early days with those companies? I mean, you're coming out of Dartmouth. You've got an MBA, I'm assuming, where you went to B school there. Yes.
Yeah, I got it. I came out of business school in 1997, and I was like, I had told jokes that I'd never done comedy before. And in business school, where I went to business school because I was very practical. I wanted to make more money. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly what I wanted to do. But when I got there, I was like, I saw Dartmouth at the top of my resume, and I'm like, I can get in most doors now, right? Like, and the truth be told, I could have gotten in most doors if I had just willed myself into those doors without those things. But what's nice about a credential is you get three things with, a fancy education. You get, you learn some stuff, hopefully. You get the name brand credential, and you get a network. And the network is very helpful. It just gives you an advantage to help open some doors, right? And your network is probably the most powerful thing you can invest in as a young person, right? And it's paid off for me over and over again throughout my career, both in business and even in comedy. And so when I got to Dartmouth, I was like, well, I can really do what I want to do. What excites me? And all I could say was I loved, and this was in 1995, 96, right? I was like, I love reading magazines. I love going to movies. I love TV. So I want to be in media. And I tried to get into those industries, but I had no experience. And then I thought, well, what the hell? Nobody has any experience in the internet. Surely somebody will hire me there. And I got in, and the economy was so good in 1997 that these guys couldn't find anybody to hire with any experience in the advertising industry. And if they could, they wouldn't have hired me. And, a few years later, when I had some industry experience, I wouldn't have gone to that job. So we were perfectly, inexperienced.
Matched at the time.
At the right time, it was a perfect match for us. And I just happened to meet some of the greatest guys that I could have met at that point in my career, who became mentors and did a lot for me over the next years. But I ran the New York sales team, the ad sales team for Launch.com from 1997 until the thing blew up. And then I was out in LA, and then Yahoo kind of brought us into the fold, and I stayed on the ad sales team at Yahoo for a long time too.
I mean, some of that's got to be. So here you walk into a job, even though you've got the Dartmouth pedigree, walking into a job that maybe, is in an industry you don't know a whole lot about. That's got to create a tremendous amount of pressure. Did you feel any type of, I don't want to say imposter syndrome. You just came out of B school, but did you feel a lot of pressure on yourself to perform quickly? I did.
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never lived in New York before. I'd never worked in advertising before. And what I'd sold was, I basically talked my way into this job because I was like, okay, I raised money at my college for 3 years after graduation. I sold ads for the Dartmouth, the business school student paper. I sort of wove this story that I could sell. And by the time I got to the interviews with the launch guys, I was so clear about what I wanted to do and the kind of people I wanted to be with that, I ended every interview and I was like, if there's any reason you don't want to hire me, like, I want to talk about it right now because I want this job. I want to be a part of this company. I want to be a part of this industry, and I want to see where this goes. So I talked my way into the job, but I still had no idea what I was doing. And probably 9 months or a year in, my boss sat me down. I'll never forget this lunch. Good buddy of mine to today still. But he sat me down and he said, look, man, if you don't start closing, we're going to fire you. And it was at the restaurant at Black Rock, which was the CBS TV headquarters on 6th Avenue in New York City. And he basically threatened to fire me. And that night, it was a Friday, and I went home, and my girlfriend at the time came over, and I told her what happened, and I opened a bottle of champagne with her. And she's like, why are we celebrating? I was like, because I'm going to give it everything I have, and it's either going to work or it's not. And I'm going to go all in. And we had some champagne. And the next morning I got up and I went to the office, and I started working, 80, 85 hours a week. Because why not? I was single. I had no kids. My roommate at the time was working on Wall Street. He was working 100 hours a week. My girlfriend was a consultant. She was on the road 4 days a week. I had the time to work. And so I just started putting in the hours, and I was like, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to go out swinging, right? And and go figure, it started working out.
Yeah, no, this is okay. I'm fascinated by this story. This is really interesting because do you think it was lack of effort? Because you said you went to 85 hours a week, so you were probably just kind of doing whatever you were doing before. Was it effort or skill or a blend of the two? And if you can think back, what did you do to sharpen the knife? How'd you get better in your skill set? Because look, I don't care. You can put all the effort if you want, but if you don't develop a skill set in whatever you're doing, you're never going to be good at it.
Well, there's a lot of things that were going on. I didn't really have a focused person showing me how to do what I needed to do. I don't think. And and I think what I needed to do was just not take no for an answer and not allow myself to be ignored. And at that point in my life, I was like, I had nothing to lose. I was completely naive about how little I knew. And all I know is I wanted to succeed. And so I just started going like, all right, I got real focused about, here's the scoreboard. Here's all the leads I have. Here's all the people I know. Here's who the people can connect me with. And I really started working that network. And I had friends that, I went to business school with who were now in marketing. I would call them. I would call friends of theirs. I would call, people who graduated 4 years before me and say, you don't know me, but, I'm doing this thing. I'd love to talk to you. And if you can't tell me, if you can't help me right now, can you point me in the right direction? That kind of thing. Like, I just really started prospecting much harder than I had. And the thing is, man, like, it was easier to do then than it is now when I'm selling like my own thing, right? I really believed in my product. I really liked what we were doing. We were on the cusp of of technology and music in like 1998, 99, when things, we were becoming Pandora or Spotify before there was even broadband to the home. And so we had a great idea. We had a great vision. It was just way too early. Now, being early is also being wrong. I get it. But I was really passionate about it. And I just started proselytizing the gospel of it. And people could sense my commitment and my passion. The guy who was the senior vice president of marketing at Tommy Hilfiger called me after I pitched him, and he said, "I want you to come work for me." And I was like, I don't know anything about fashion. He's just, I like your energy. I want you to come. And I went and I interviewed with Tommy, and I just was like, you know what? And I talked to Tommy Hilfiger in his office about like Keith Richards and, like fashion and Rolling Stones. And it was really, really cool. But I wanted to be a part of that gang. I wanted to be a part of this gang that I had joined. There's that word again, gang. The team I had joined at launch, and I stuck around and I benefited from that. But I don't know. I just started working in a way that most people would find to be irrational. But when you're 28 and you don't have kids and you're single, and like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, but like, I think even then, like, I think your upbringing is showing through right there, because I think you left your tribe at home. And that side of it's always been appealing to you, even in business. Yeah, I mean, look, as humans, we always seek a tribe, right? But 100%. I just can't imagine. Like, I had two older sisters. We were all 3 years apart. So, the one I'm fairly, growing up as kids, I'm sort of close to the one because it's 3 years. But my older sister was gone to college by the time I was, she left early. But yeah, dude, I can see how that need to be in a tribe for you would be more important almost than a financial opportunity. That's cool.
Well, they weren't mutually exclusive. I mean, I was also hoping to make a nice
I'm sure they were going to pay there. Yeah, I'm sure they were going to pay.
And that wasn't the gig that paid me the first gig that paid was at Yahoo. When Yahoo bought Launch, they just kept us alive. We'd gone through the busting of the .com bubble like everybody else. And when Yahoo bought us, we had laid off, the company had laid off 4/5 of the employees, and I was lucky to make the cuts. And we got to Yahoo, and then Yahoo slowly started to come back, and I was very fortunate to be able to benefit off of that.
Can I ask about that? Because I think there's with right now the economy doing what it's doing, there's a lot of people, especially here in Las Vegas, the casinos are laying some people off, trying to consolidate for their shareholders and, turn in good reports. I've never, luckily, I'm chronically unemployable. I've always kind of been my own guy. I've never been in a corporate setting where a layoff was a probability or even a possibility. What advice would you give to somebody, as somebody that's navigated those waters? What advice would you give to somebody to keep your chin up, or how to avoid the axe, or whatever?
Well, I was very fortunate to not get the axe, but I could feel the breeze on my neck, and what happened from like 98. What happened in 98, 99 was all this money was flowing around and companies were hiring people. They were growing way too fast. They were hiring people that it was kind of like, the people doing mortgages in 2007. And it was like, anybody with a heartbeat could be a realtor or,
it's still that way.
Oh, well, be in the mortgage business. Well, this market's probably, making it a little harder, right? So what a downturn does is sort of gets you back to right size. And so, the first round of layoffs, it's like, well, those people probably weren't the right people to be here in the first place. But then like the second and the third round, you start going, oh man, we're letting some good people go here. Like nobody is safe. And if there'd have been another round of layoffs, I wouldn't have made it, right? Like it was down to like family members. So it was, but what I think I saw was that people's attitude was the differentiator in many cases. People that were like doing their everything they could to succeed, even if they weren't the most talented people. And I would count, I'm a talented guy, I work hard, but like I think my hard work kept me around more than my talent did. In some of those interviews or some of those layoffs. And so I think that attitude and hard work, I don't, and you sound like an old guy whenever you say something like this, but like, I think it's an underappreciated asset in today's world where, you do see some of the rhetoric around younger generation and you're like, I don't hear a lot of people talking about like willing themselves to succeed. You see a lot of these posts on Instagram about, can you believe these banks are making their employees work 100 hours a week? And I'm like, yeah, I can. That's how they find out who's committed and who's not. Is it right? Well, is it unhealthy? Can be, but there's a lot of jobs that aren't investment banking out there waiting for you. Yeah. So like, if that's not the gig for you, go do something else. Go find something that you really love that is sustainable for you. I don't think anybody goes into anybody who thinks the banking is a job for a 40-hour week job is going to be wildly disappointed at some point along the way. The senior partners, these are guys that cancel vacations because there's a deal that pops up and they got to come home from Europe, leave their family there. And that's why they make $5 million a year. And if you don't want to do that, go do something else. Now, I'm not doing that.
But I think
saying, like, there's a job out there for you where you can be you.
It is my firm belief that ever since COVID, there's just a level of apathy that's run through everything. I mean, in every industry, it doesn't just have to be investment banking. Everybody wants to find a way to make $1 million online and not have to actually put forth any effort. That's the new dream.
Send me the job. Send me that job link because I'd like to do it.
Yeah, well, I always laugh with my wife. Apparently, being here in Vegas, you look around, apparently there's some magic meeting where they just give away free money and we don't get invited to it. We actually have to work for ours.
Oh, they do. They do give it away. They do give it away, but it's you have to put up collateral or, you're paying 21% interest. And at a certain point, you got to pay the piper. And so look, I'm doing exactly what I want to do today. And I know we'll get to that, but I'm not making $1 million a year. I'm making, very, very little money. So it's a trade-off. And I've earned the right to be able to do it. But I also have to forego living like some jet setter lifestyle that we'd probably like to live if I was making, $1 million a year. I'd have a NetJets card if I was making $1 million a year. But let's get away from that.
Yeah, let's get to that. So was there a moment in your career, and obviously in your professional life, where you were just like, look, I'm just burnt. I'm just cooked. There's got to be a better way because I'm just not finding what I need.
Yeah, well, there's two kind of inflection points. I made some money at Yahoo, but I had always still had this thing in the back of my head. I want to be a stand-up comedian. And in 2004, I got to meet some people who were going to connect me with a way to be a stand-up comedian in LA. And I moved out to I left Yahoo because I had money in the bank and I was still single. Thanks to Yahoo, I'd paid off my student loans and I'd put plenty of money in the bank, many years worth of expenses in the bank. And I was like, I'm going to go do stand-up comedy. That's what I'm going to do. And I moved to LA. My then girlfriend, now wife, followed me shortly thereafter. And I did stand-up comedy every weekend for 2 years, hosting at the Improvs in Orange County. And and I had no idea how good that gig was while I had it, but I was doing the thing I really wanted to do.
At the mall? You're talking about the one at the mall?
Yeah. The Brea and Irvine Improvs. Now these were the old, both clubs have been torn down and replaced since 2007 when I left, but I was doing that every weekend. And I was opening for Dave Attell, Kevin Nealon, Norm Macdonald, like legit big time headliners.
Well, let's back up just a little bit, right? So here you are, you're MBA from Dartmouth, and there's this burning feeling to be a stand-up comedian. So
that's correct.
What was it like? Like what about that? Like what?
I don't know, because it's the narcotic feeling you get when you make a room of 300 people wet their pants at the same time. There's nothing like it. There's no high I've experienced like making a whole room of people laugh at the same time. It's narcotic. And
when did you know you wanted to do this? And when did you know you had an
when I told jokes in business school to a talent show, I just made fun. I co-hosted a talent show at business school, and I made fun of my friends for 12 minutes, and the room was just busted up. And it was like, oh, that's what I want to do. That's what makes me special. And this was, this is almost pre-internet. I mean, it was early in the internet, and it was, pre-social media. Today, everybody wants to be a stand-up comedian. So like having this idea to be a stand-up comic wasn't, and to be somebody with a Ivy League MBA, like that was unique. Today, if you go on Instagram and look for, Harvard MBA comedian, you'll find a dozen of them. I guarantee you.
What was it last night or last week? Conan got the Mark Twain Humor Prize, and
he's a Harvard undergrad, but he was at the Harvard Lampoon. I mean, like, and there's there's hundreds of Harvard Lampoon graduates in the entertainment industry, but yeah. So I wanted this. I had this idea in the back of my head, and it was what made me special. It was also plagued me from a career management standpoint. I mean, if I really was dedicated to the media business, I'd be doing something. I'd be running some big media property today, presumably, if I hadn't blown myself up. But so I went out to LA, and I was doing stand-up comedy every weekend, and for 2 years, and I was terrible when I got out there. I'd done maybe 30 comedy shows in my life, and then I'm opening for Daniel Tosh. It was brutal, but I got much better. But after 2 years, I got engaged to my wife, and I was like, I think I need a steady job. I was doing really well in media, and now I'm making, not good money, and the future is very uncertain. And it wasn't like I was such a natural that people were like, dude, this is your thing. I mean, I was the funny guy in a business situation, but I wasn't like the funniest. Like the Improv, they're like, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah, you're the best. You're the best golfer at your club, but you're not going on tour anytime soon.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, so and it's great. It's great to hang out and golf and be a fun person to golf with. But if you want to make a living golfing, there's
a whole different level.
You got to come to Jesus on that, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I started thinking about getting another job. And the phone rings one day, and it's a buddy of mine from Yahoo who said, "Would you be interested in joining this small social media company called Facebook?" And I was like, yeah. And I told my wife, someday this company could be as big as MySpace. And that was my big insight, right? And of course, it became 1,000 times bigger. And I was fortunate to be on that ride. When I got there were 250 employees. When I left, there were maybe 4,000. And so it grew by 16x in that time. The audience, the global audience grew from like 25 million a month to like 1 billion a month. And of course, now it's over 3 billion. But I got to the point in 2011 where I was like, they asked me to move to Palo Alto from LA, where I was running the West Coast sales team. And I just didn't want to do it. My heart wasn't in it. And that's that time where, you were referring to before, where you're like, I just don't want to do this. Isn't something that I want to keep doing, even though now I didn't know how big the company was going to become. And if I had, I probably would have stuck around, because the amount of money I left on the table was ridiculous.
Yeah, it had to be
Now
massive.
my stock options were already worth more money than I ever thought I would ever need or want. But, I probably would have doubled what I had if I'd stuck around.
Yeah.
But I bailed. So I bailed. I went home. I moved back to Atlanta, where I grew up, and my parents were there, and they were old and sick, and I had an opportunity to play a role in their life and to raise my children in an environment that I was excited about. And we went home in 2011.
And what'd you do in Atlanta when you went back?
Not much.
Okay.
So this is where I quit my job I quit my job at 42. Some say I retired at 42. I didn't plan to stop working. I just was like, I'm going to stop doing this, and meaning will find me. You can probably hear the sirens outside my street.
Yeah,
the
New York.
rough
Come on,
streets of the Upper West Side, man.
Of course, it never stops.
So I thought, when I left my job, I was like, I'll figure it out, but it's really interesting how easy it is to fill your day with lots of fun stuff that aren't work. You work out, you get healthy, you travel, you read books, you spend time with your kids, you play a lot of golf. Like, life's pretty good until a certain point where you're like, wake up one day and you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Who am I? I don't know how to answer the question, what do you do? Like, I feel like a loser. Like, I'm very, very lucky, but I feel like a lucky loser right now. Mm-hmm. And eventually
we didn't have a purpose.
I had no purpose.
No purpose.
And eventually, I even took another job I shouldn't have taken. I just sort of took a job that I thought would look good, and it wasn't a good fit, and it just wasn't. My heart wasn't in it. And so after a year of that, I said, I was afraid. That is the word. I was afraid to try to do stand-up comedy again, because I had failed. I had quit. I didn't fail. I quit before.
You just stopped.
And I was ashamed that what are people going to say? What would people that I worked with in the technology business think that I was going to go back? Did I look wishy-washy, whatever? And of course, worrying about what other people think is the worst thing you can do. And so I just said, screw it. I'm going to write every day. I'm going to start going to open mics again. And this is in 2014. And we'll see what happens. And so that's what happened. And you know what, when you declare what you stand for, what you want to do, you eventually meet fellow travelers, and you eventually find people who are going to, be your partners on the journey in, some way, or be people that you can help, and they can help you back. Mm. And that's eventually what happened in Atlanta. And I started doing comedy again. I started doing a lot of comedy, got better. I've done, every festival except for like the top 2 or 3 in North America. I've, headlined around the country. I'm doing the thing that I want to do. I write every day. Here's the thing, man. I'm very good at several different things. I'm a very good podcaster. I'm a very good comic. I'm a very good writer. And I'm a very good speaker too. I just did a great speaking event last week. I might even be great at speaking. But as somebody, the guy that ran the New York Comedy Festival, he's like, you're good. You're very good, right? And he goes, that's not enough though, right? You have to be great. And that is absolutely true in the comedy business, where everybody wants to be a comic, or everybody wants to be a great musician. Everybody wants to be a musician. Well, if you want to be a musician who stands out, who sells tickets, who can support himself and his family doing that thing, you have to be great. Well, very good isn't good enough.
What you're looking for is my good friend John Ashroff. Are you committed, or are you interested? And I think everybody's interested. Everybody, hey, we want to put you on stage for 15 minutes. Everybody's going to laugh at what you say. I'm totally interested in that. Yeah. You've actually got to go do the work to get good at doing it. Oh, I don't want to do that.
Well, the old joke about the difference between committed and interested, right? Or committed and involved.
What's that?
Well, like you look at your breakfast plate, right? The chicken is involved. The pig is committed.
Yes.
And I think, what's interesting is that kid at 28 years old who was absolutely committed to his job because it was succeed or not eat, not pay your rent, or go get some other job that you didn't want. Like, I think I'm seeing that maniacal level of commitment really is what separates the people that are breaking through in comedy from the people who are very good, but not breaking through.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting to observe, and these.
Quick question while we're on the topic. Who's the best? Who do
Who's
you
the
think
best
the best
comic?
is? Yeah, who's the best?
Oh, my favorites are, the Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle,
Yeah.
Gary Gulman is a genius. I just really admire smart comedy written by people who bring their own voice to the table.
I think Bill
Who's
Burr
your favorite?
is by far not even close. He's my favorite because I love him so much because whether it's part of the act or I think it's genuine to him, he really does not give an absolute shit what you think about what he's saying.
Yeah, and I think that's the level of detachment that you have to get to where you're like, look, I'm going to say, if you don't have that, then you're going to say what you think is going to be they'll find funny, and that the audiences can smell that weakness. Let me tell you a Bill Burr story.
I love that.
So in 2005 or 2006, maybe, I was starting to get decently good. And I hosted for Bill Burr one weekend at the Ontario, California Improv. Ontario's Eastern LA. It's the Inland Empire. And we're talking one night in the green room, me and the middle comic and Bill Burr, and we'd gotten the topic of goals or whatever. And I said, well, what are your goals? And he goes, I want to be a great comedian. And I said, you are a great comedian. At this point, he's working on his third special. He's working on if you ever seen the muffin smashing bit that he did back in like 2006 from his special, he was working on that weekend, and he was going to film it within a few months. And I was like, you are a great comedian. He goes, no, I want to be one of the great comedians. He's talking about Cosby, Carlin.
Yeah, forever.
He's talking about the pantheon.
Yeah.
Right. He's not talking about like, I want to be pretty good. I want to.
No, he wants to be on Mount Rushmore of comedy. He's trying to get.
He wants to be on the Mount Rushmore. And I remember just being like, oh shit, man, this is the level of commitment that it takes to be the best. Like, and I was like inspired and totally dejected, because it's like, you really have to have that if you want to be that good.
So where are you on that scale? Where are you on?
I think, where I am on that scale? I am unfocused. I am doing a lot of things very well, but I am not obsessive about one of them. And so I was having this conversation with my wife this weekend. It's like, I think, and to do this and to pick which one that I want to be absolutely committed to will require murdering two of my loves.
Which are?
I don't know yet.
It's funny. I have a friend of mine that a good friend is that guy that calls you out when you need to be called out. And every time we talk about goals or talk about, what we want to achieve, it's never, what are you going to do or what are you willing to do to get there? The first question is always, what are you willing to give up to get there?
Yeah.
Like what are you asking? Right. Because you can't if you try to get to two places at once, you're not going to get to either. And that's always the first question.
Yeah. The dog that chases two rabbits catches neither.
No.
Do you know who Morgan Housel is?
I don't.
The Psychology of Money guy, the guy who wrote the book, The Psychology of Money.
I know the book, but I don't know who he is.
So that guy, he's been a financial journalist for a decade and a half or something like that, and then wrote this book that went on to sell, I think it sold like 8 or 9 million copies across all formats and across all markets. Gigantic book. The average book sells like 10,000 copies, right? So this thing, he had this thing that stuck with me that was written in one of his articles, wasn't even in the book. And he said that what is required to succeed isn't skill, it's scarcity. And so if you want to do something and be in, the 0.1% of something, of compensation, of fame or whatever, you have to be incredible at something other people aren't incredible at. The world's got 1 million pretty good podcasts. The world's got 1 million pretty good realtors. The world's got 1 million pretty good fill in the blank. Tennis players, athletes, artists are really good examples of that because their success is so public. You can make a really good living as the 100th best accountant in New York City. It's like, but in tennis or in golf, there's only one winner every weekend. And so what Housel was saying is like, you have to have something nobody else has, or you're going to be compensated commensurate to your uniqueness. And I think that's the thing to figure out, especially in a category where there's a lot of people who want to succeed doing the same thing.
Is to
Do you
figure
see
out
that
what
in your world?
Yeah,
Do you
what makes
see
you. Yeah, well, so yes, I mean in real estate, which is what we are here in Vegas, and it's, how am I going to put this? It's you trade on reputation. Everything is reputation, and every deal gives you an opportunity to improve or diminish it. And the better the elite people in my business, I don't think are any better at marketing properties. I don't think they're any better at writing, especially now in the age of AI, of writing descriptions or brochures or pamphlets or any of that stuff. I don't think anybody's any better. I think they are masters at managing their reputation. And I think that's what makes the elite of the elite in my business, especially in between here, a lot of friends in LA in this business and a lot of friends here in Vegas, because now our market swap high-end clients so quickly back and forth. But the better you manage your reputation, the better you are. And again, it's about perceived value, because what is perceived value? Perceived value is what people say about you when you're not there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's your brand. That's
the brand. Yeah, that's everything in this business. And because I know some people that are very skilled at what we do, very knowledgeable. They're just, they understand the math of the market. They understand leading indicators in different parts, the stock market, the bonds that affect our market in a different way, but yet they don't sell the most houses. Right. They make these amazing YouTube videos about what's happening in the forecast for what's going on, but they don't do the best in the marketplace, because this particular industry respects reputation more than anything else. The best person is not always the best person here. It's all an illusion.
What do you think a high-end client wants when they're looking to choose? I mean, they've got plenty of realtors to choose from, right?
Yeah,
or plenty of partners in a real estate transaction to choose from,
right?
What do they look? Besides, assuming they're going to have an outcome that's within 2% of each other, right? What are they looking for?
To me, I genuinely believe a high-end client is looking for the person they genuinely believe is going to get them where they want to go as far as accomplish their goals with the least amount of friction. And in the high end, especially, they don't want to educate anybody. You have to kind of understand how high net worth people work, how they think, what their expectations are. They don't want to educate you to their needs. They just want somebody that understands those things. And I think that is the key to it.
We sold our house. We sold two houses, one in Atlanta and one in the mountains of North Carolina, when we moved up here to New York last year, 2024. And we interviewed realtors, and one of them, who's great, there's a lot of very talented realtors in Atlanta, and we're friends with a lot of them. And one of them said, "Well, what are you looking for besides, getting the most for your property?" And I thought for a second. I was like, I'm looking for a person that when I see their car drive up, I'm happy to see them. Like, I know that they're going to make my day better, because they're going to be solving my problems and not bringing me problems
with the least amount of friction. That's exactly what I just said.
Yeah, that's right. But it's not just, it's not like friction. It's like it's a level of trust, where you're like, I know this person is honest and they know what they're doing and they're committed to our outcome.
Well, it's funny. The one question that all of our people, we have a lot of people. I've got 585 agents that work for us here. We have a very large company.
Yeah, big time.
But the number one question that I teach our people to ask that I think gets us more business than anybody else, because nobody really asks this, is everybody in this business gets so concerned with the first time you talk to a client on the phone. Let's say they're looking to buy a house. So what do you want? I want a 3-2. I want this. I want a pool. I want it here. What's your price point? What's that? They're just going through this mental garbage checklist of the house, and it's done. Well, you have to get all that information because you have to know what people want. But at the end of that conversation, the last question we always ask is, forget the house. You're moving your life here. You're relocating your life here. What else can we find out for you that you need to know about living here. I mean, do you need to know what the best club baseball team is? Do you have to know? Is there a special needs program at this particular school for your child? What else can we chase down? Where's your church? Where's your gym? What clubs do you want to be in? Tell me about your life moving here, and let us chase all that down for you. And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, because it stops being about the house and becomes about the client and their actual needs.
I hear this. I speak to the wealth management industry pretty frequently, and what's happening in that business is, and it's happening in many businesses in real estate as well, is most of the job has been commoditized by software. And of course, AI is, and with hey, all listings are public now, right? I mean, you don't have anything proprietary there, and so it's who knows the client better. The differentiator is, how do you understand the emotional needs of your client beyond just, hey, I'm going to beat the market by 0.5%, and we're going to keep you in as little volatility as possible. Okay, that's nice, but anybody can license the software to do that. It's how do you keep me feeling okay about my life and my financial things in a way that somebody else that doesn't know me as well won't be able to provide. So I see that. I see a lot of similarities.
And that's the answer that I always give on, are you worried that AI is going to replace real estate agents? And I'm like, not at all, because I think that people, yes, a certain percentage of the public with, high financial IQ and just the time to deal with it can make their own decisions and figure it out.
But it's not about being replaced. AI could replace, like, what do you call it? Title insurance or something like that, right? Could it not? Like,
let's hope not, because I own a title company.
But block. Well, it could. Okay, I'm gonna say it could. It's going to change. Blockchain is going to change that industry significantly, right?
Yes, the reason it hasn't already is because blockchain is still imperfect. Is not perfect. It still has imperfections.
And when you say it's not going to replace realtors, but realtors or any profession that isn't using AI, and if you're not getting smart about AI right now, you are falling behind. You can't see it, but you are losing ground on people who are doing it. I don't care what industry you're in. It very much in comedy and in writing right now too. This sounds so silly because I feel like I'm at the Boca del Vista, Senior Learning Center. But yes. I took a Coursera AI course. I mean, I've been using these tools for a while, but I was like, I need to start at the basics and really start to kind of build my AI skill, like from a foundation, and start getting smart about all the different tools out there. And if you're not doing that in your industry, you're going to get smoked. It might not happen this year. It might not happen next year, but it is going to happen.
It's so funny when I run into people. I'm like, oh yeah, I use AI every day. And they're like, yeah, I use it to give me social media posts. I'm like, dude, I took our P&Ls and all of our numbers for the last 3 years. I uploaded it, had it completely analyze our business models of all of our stuff, find areas where we weren't paying attention and could improve it. And it did what a consultant 10 years ago would have done in a month. It knocked out in 5 minutes.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I mean, like, it's only going to get more interesting. I was using two and a half years ago, started poking around with different models to see, okay, well, can it help me write? Can it help me tell jokes? Can it find, and not like write jokes, because humans can't imitate other humans' voices very well. And AI can't do it either. I mean, in writing. So it's more like, hey, give me another way to say this phrase. As opposed to, and the improvement in the last 2 years has just been mind blowing. So like, whatever industry you're in, I mean, get on it, guy.
Well, you've written a book. So have you loaded your book into an AI assistant?
Yeah.
Said, read this, and now give it back to me in my own voice. Because that's a pretty big sample.
So what I'll do is say, okay, this is my and writers talk about this, and I mean, one of the hardest things for me, I have a Substack at words.paulollinger.com. And what I try to do is write about life and happiness and success in a way, it's called Reasonably Happy, the Skeptic's Guide to Achievable Contentment, right? And so I try to write entertaining, funny stories that are generally like things that happen to me or some observation I'll make in the world, and I'll tie it back to some lesson. Right? It's secular sermons, if you will. that are, have some potty jokes and are pretty damn funny. And if I've achieved my goals. And so what I'll do is say, here's 50 essays I've written over the last however many years. Right.
Why am I picturing Larry David with a fable on the end?
Well, there you go. Right. So
curb your enthusiasm, but with a point.
Well, it's something like that. And you feed it, you upload what you've written and say, this is my voice. I'm interested in writing about, take an item from the news, like tariffs. Okay. And I'm not looking to state a point of view on tariffs. I'm just saying, like, give me some thoughts on what's a point of view on tariffs that's interesting. Or I think this is, I think I want to write about tariffs. Give me 3 examples of why tariffs could be good or tariffs could be bad. Just to start the mental exercise of getting things going. And then, I think what's one thing that AI is really good for in writing is editing. I'll spend a few hours writing something, and I'll take, an 800-word draft or whatever it is and upload it to multiple different GPTs and say, tell me how I can make this better. Can I make it shorter? Can I add more examples? Can I use better language? Am I repeating words? Things like that. Like it's an editor. It's a really effective editor. It's not perfect, but it's very, very effective. And so when I actually take it to my human editor at some point, I'm not wasting his time. I'm giving him a very well polished draft. And he always has things that he can help me improve, but everything gets better because I've done the work with something to help me think through, getting it to 95% before I get it to 100%. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does, but to the point that we were talking about earlier, with AI not replacing that connection, like you can use it to write, but it can't create your tone, and it can't deliver that material in a way that you can.
It can't quite. It's not there yet. I mean, it will get there.
But I will
get there.
But again,
I don't look. I was having this conversation with a comedian, a very smart, very funny comedian named Zain Sharif in Atlanta today. And Zain, what I love about him is he writes beautiful, well-crafted jokes. And we were both lamenting how, the crowd work videos are what Instagram and TikTok, what their algorithms promote, just because that's who knows why.
Matt
Rife, exactly. And we both acknowledge Matt Rife's success and that Matt Rife works hard, but that's not the kind of comedy that either of us wants to do. Plus, he's 10 times better looking than either of us. So screw Matt Rife. But we're sitting there and, like, I think there could be, AI could completely obliterate us and make us completely unnecessary comedically, or it might inspire in people a reinvestment and a deeper interest in bespoke goods, in handcrafted, hand-woven comedy.
Let me tell you why you're safe. I'm going to tell you why you're safe, Paul. For the same reason that I'm safe. And I tell my kids this every day. And if you look at the generation of teenagers, right? If you look at a teenager, you can't see their face because all you can see is this as they look at their phone. I got
2 of them.
Yeah. And all they do is look at their phone. I tell my kids, if you want to have a competitive advantage, you want to have that thing in 15 or 20 years that's going to make you better than everybody else. It'll be the ability to look in another human and connect with them on a one-on-one personal level. Because most of your friends that are spending all of their time staring at a screen won't have it. I think your father knew that at that dinner table when he was making everybody ask questions, teaching you how to communicate and connect with others. And I think being a great communicator in any industry is going to keep you relevant regardless of what AI does. And I can't imagine a field where it's more important to be a great communicator than comedy.
I don't think you can succeed if you lack sincerity, and people taking shortcuts is still very transparent. We'll see how that changes over time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. If you could go back, because literally my whole podcast is a love letter to my dipshit 27-year-old self, and trying to, if I could go back, and I got a book coming out November 5th called Also Escaping the Drift. It is a user's manual to my dipshit 27-year-old self. But if you could go back and talk to young Paul hustle and bustle, what advice would you give him now that you've lived through the life? What would you tell him?
I maybe don't leave Facebook in 2011. Maybe don't do that.
Build time machine is what you would tell him.
Maybe stick around for 3 or 4 more years.
Fair.
Look, my life has worked out. I have a wife who loves me, whom I love, and I live with my kids who tolerate me. So I'm doing very, very well. I think it was great, and it is around 27, and this is not a coincidence. I think I started to become a better person. I think it's because my brain was done, fully growing. But I think around that time, 26, 27, I was starting to go like, oh, if I want to be successful, I need to work hard. And if I work hard, in general, on average, ceteris paribus, all else equal, good things happen. Mm-hmm. And so, I think sometimes those are lessons, especially guys just have to learn. You can hear your dad can beat you over the head with all this advice, and even your dad's friends who maybe you'll listen. I'm sure you've got your friends who, will you talk to my kid? And just, and you'll ask your friend, will you talk to my kid? Because my kid won't listen to me and your kid won't listen to you. And maybe we can help each other out. But some of these things, young people just have to learn on their own. And I hope that young people are still learning 24, 25, whatever. If you work hard, all else equal, good things will happen.
Well, dude, that's why I love like Alex Hormozy. I love his message that he puts out now. Like he put something out yesterday that says, normally the most successful person in a room is the person that's willing to look stupid the longest. Because they're willing to make those mistakes.
I think Epictetus said something like that. Like your willingness to fail is a key to your success. Like if you're worried about looking stupid, you're never going to try anything that you're not already good at, which means you're never going to grow.
Well, to that point, for everybody listening to this, that's got some dream, whatever it is that they have pushed to the side, chasing the conventional way to the almighty dollar. What do you think and I'm not talking about where would you be working? I'm talking about what would your satisfaction in life with your life? What would your relationship with your wife and your kids be had you not chased this dream?
When the market took a dive that first week of COVID, we were on spring break in very nice circumstances in the Caribbean. And I remember looking, and seeing our net worth go down by 30% in a week. And I thought to myself, I guess I'll get a job. I think that if we lost 50% of what we had tomorrow, God forbid, I think we'd be okay, because I'd go find something worth doing, and I'd try to I'd do the best job I possibly could. And the reason I chose to chase this dream is because I wanted to avoid the deathbed regret of wanting to know the answer to the question, what would happen if I gave it my all? Now, I haven't given it my all yet, and I'm going to keep giving it my all, but I've given it everything I've had up to this point, to about 98.5%. And so, if I'm pretty close to having an answer to what would happen if I gave it my all. And what happens? You get a lot better. You learn a lot, you meet a lot of interesting people, you get to do the thing. And the reward for trying and giving it your all is the doing of the thing. Rewards past that are not guaranteed, especially in the creative arts. And yes, the harder you work, the more likely you are to succeed. The more focused you are, the more likely you are to succeed. But in the end, the reward is getting better at something you care about.
And I think that's, we'll wrap it up with that. Paul, if they want to find more you, man, how do they find you?
Words.paulollinger.com is PAULOLLINGER. That's my writing. You'll see a lot of the podcasts there, and I promote the other stuff I'm doing there as well. Also on all the social networks. So search for me, baby.
Well, man, we will. And if you're ever I'm sure you'll be in Vegas, man. It's what you do. When you come out, make sure you stop by and say hi.
I sure will. Thanks for having me.
Well, man, Thanks for joining us today with that. And if you listen to that, man, what I'm taking away from that is we get so focused on chasing the almighty dollar, on chasing the things that we think we're supposed to do. But as long as you can maintain two things, this is what I'm taking away from Paul. Number one, never lose sight of that thing inside you that is calling you that you always want to be part of. Go try it, do it, because what's the worst that could happen? And as long as you hang on to eternal optimism, that no matter what happens, you'll just kind of be able to figure it out, you're going to be okay. We'll see you next week. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Escaping the Drift. Hope you got a bunch out of it, or at least as much as I did out of it. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the show, you can always go over to escapingthedrift.com. You can join our mailing list. But do me a favor, if you wouldn't mind, throw up that 5-star review, give us a share, do something, man. We're here for you. Hopefully you'll be here for us. But anyway, in the meantime, we will see you at the next episode.